Joe Biden grew up during the Cold War. After 5 decades in Washington, that fact is starting to look less like a relic and more like a reward as Russian tanks sweep across Ukraine. What did Joe Biden say to Vladimir Putin? And what would the ramifications be? Let's have a look. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel, Elon Musk World, where we tell you all the latest news about Elon Musk and his multi-billion-dollar companies. In today's video, we are going to tell you about the frightening message Joe Biden gave to Vladimir Putin. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our incredible videos. Biden was elected to the Senate during the Soviet Union's leadership of Leonid Brezhnev, and he spent much of his career in Washington hanging around on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, rising through the ranks to become the committee's top Democrat. Biden was in talks with Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping about Soviet nukes by the time he was in his second term, and subsequently in Moscow to discuss the same weapons with the Kremlin. What Biden lacked in foreign policy book smarts, he made up for with his energy and a big grin. During his 2020 presidential campaign, Biden would regularly comment, "There's an ancient Chinese proverb, it's better to travel 10,000 miles than read 10,000 books." And voters were ready to purchase what Biden was selling after 4 years of Donald Trump's isolationist foreign policy. In recent months, Biden and his colleagues have used their hustle and a Rolodex established over decades to orchestrate one of the most cohesive sanctions against Russia in history. And as Biden heads into the Capitol for his first State of the Union address, his experience with foreign affairs will undoubtedly be on display during a speech that is as much about the home agenda as it is about the foreign agenda in most years. Biden is returning to the Hill with a slew of domestic political issues. According to polls, Biden is in trouble, with more people disapproving of his job performance than applauding it, and the public is worried about the country's future. His approval ratings are at an all-time low for his first term, and his efforts to assemble a coalition to ensure Russia are yielding no political benefits. His domestic Build Back Better plan is still stalled in the Senate. Early initiatives to reform policing appear to be doomed for the remainder of the year, and a climate bill appears to be shrinking swiftly. Even his appointment of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court as the first black woman on the court hasn't created much excitement in the polls. So, during this evening's speech, Biden is expected to demonstrate his basic presidential ability, which will take place with members of Congress in the chamber, but no ordinary visitors looking from the gallery, one level above. Biden's intensely personal approach in negotiations may have failed to persuade senators like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema to support his Democratic agenda, but it helped rally foreign allies behind a unified package of sanctions against Moscow, including some members of Vladimir Putin's inner circle. The pursuit of sanctions was not simple. After Congress failed to complete work on a pre-invasion sanctions package, the administration was left to pursue its own. While several members of Congress encouraged Biden to just apply sanctions on his own to discourage Putin from invading Ukraine, Biden refused the request and ignored the punditry, telling his team that preemptive penalties would only aggravate Putin. Instead, Biden reorganized U.S. forces in Europe to have the support of NATO allies, a move that prompted other countries to do the same. And the brief release of intelligence on Putin's campaign was intended as a gentle nudge to Russia, the spycraft equivalent of a parent telling a child, "I see what you're doing." But behind the scenes, Biden's team put in place a web of sanctions that effectively cut off Russia's access to a large amount of Western capital once Putin invaded Ukraine. Many of Biden's sanctions architects were veterans of the 2014 sanctions imposed in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Crimea, which had minimal impact on Putin's actions. Biden wants to be harsher this time, forming a coalition that may prevent Putin from obtaining dollars, pounds, euros, or yen. Americans tend to rally around the wartime presidents. That hasn't happened yet, but the nonstop news coverage is impossible to miss. And in an era of social media, images purporting to be Russian targets of civilians and Ukrainian civilians' willingness to fight back have spread the story of Ukrainian resistance and Russian belligerence better than any Soviet-era propaganda. To be sure, there is still plenty of risk for Biden's sanction gambit to go badly. U.S. forces are not fighting in Ukraine, but their technology and dollars are engaged. Putin has shown he's more than willing to launch cyber attacks on the United States, and don't discount Putin's appetite for revenge by proxy. Just ask Hillary Clinton about her stolen emails as retribution for her tougher line against Moscow as Secretary of State. Democrats are also ready for a downturn in the economy at home, as Times' Abby Fasoulis writes in a great piece about how inflation is playing out in one Iowa House race. Inflation has already become a campaign topic. And Russia's isolation from the rest of the world will almost certainly result in a rise in energy costs as its oil and gas become more valuable. particularly to European clients. When you include the cost of sponsoring a relaunch of such Cold War operations, deficit hawks have a field day. Finally, the sanctions are not immediately effective. Sanctions take time to work, and studies have shown that their effectiveness is limited. Despite their fast spread, sanctions are a tool, not a solution. Biden, on the other hand, knows how to tell a good narrative. He doesn't channel Irish poets for the sake of amusement. He does it because it appeals to his audience. Returning to the Soviet Union might be a one-way ticket to a second act for Biden, who is attempting to rebuild public trust in his competence argument. And with Congress increasingly unable to move on much else this year, Biden's speech tonight could pivot to how he's helped restore America's standing in the world, especially if Washington won't allow him to pass any major domestic reforms before the midterm. Vladimir Putin miscalculated how the West would retaliate after invading Ukraine, according to U.S. President Joe Biden. Mr. Biden promised an unshakable conviction that freedom will always win over oppression in a primetime speech. Democrats and Republicans rose in unison to praise Mr. Biden's request to demonstrate solidarity for Ukraine. Putin's war was deliberate and unprovoked, the Democratic president said in an hour-long address to lawmakers on Tuesday night. Attempts at diplomacy were repeatedly rejected by him. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond, and he thought he could divide us here at home. Mr. Biden, whose chaotic withdrawal last year from Afghanistan damaged his popularity amongst Americans, added, "Putin was wrong. We were ready." He said that Russian planes will be barred from flying in American airspace after similar measures taken by Canadian and European authorities. The United States and its allies have imposed a slew of restrictions on Russia's economy and financial system, as well as Mr. Putin. Mr. Biden departed from his prepared statements in his speech, threatening more economic reprisal and warning Mr. Putin he has no idea what's coming. The U.S. president also greeted Ukrainian Ambassador Oksana Makarova, who sat in U.S. First Lady Joe Biden's VIP box and earned a standing ovation. After addressing his biggest foreign policy crisis, the invasion of Ukraine, Mr. Biden confronted a host of domestic troubles dogging his presidency, from the enduring pandemic to soaring customer prices and a wave of violent crime. European countries began imposing sanctions on Russia over the invasion on Thursday, with the United Kingdom announcing measures targeting dozens of Russian banks, businesses, and wealthy elites, and banning Russia's national airline, Aeroflot, from the country's airspace. The threat of sanctions and imposing the sanctions and witnessing the effect of the penalties are two different things, Biden said on Thursday, when asked if the sanctions prevented Putin from invading Ukraine. Biden also stated that his government will strive to stabilize the energy sector and mitigate the crisis's impact on fuel prices in the United States. Russia is one of the world's leading oil and natural gas producers. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a like and share it with your friends and family. Let us know if you have any questions or comments in the section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more of our incredible videos. You can also watch our other videos that we have specially selected for you. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.